From Acres USA, you are listening to the Acres USA podcast, a conversational podcast where we'll explore sustainable farming, regenerative practices, and the latest innovations in eco-agriculture with some of your favorite farmers and ranchers. I'm your host, Taylor Henry, the owner and CEO of Acres USA. Welcome to the Acres USA podcast. All right, we are joined with Matt Powers. Matt, thank you for joining us. We're excited to have you at our conference, one of our EcoAg U workshop folks. So Matt just came off of a pretty large event yourself. Do you want to kind of talk about that event, what cool things you guys did in that, and then some of the books that you have written recently?
Well, thank you so much, Taylor. It's a pleasure to be on here with you. I am really excited about this event. Acres has been, I've had a relationship with Acres for many years. They promoted my work and featured my work and even had like a special page featuring my work on their website. So I really, really appreciate you all. And I feel incredibly lucky to be included in this upcoming event with so many incredible people. I ran an event with a bunch of the same people, but in a kind of a totally different format. So like John Kempf and I, instead of him like teaching a full day, like he'll be teaching at EcoAg and doing like a keynote and all those kinds of things. He and I had a conversation. We talked about, the roots of what regenerative agriculture is philosophically, of what it is in practice in agronomy, and what it can be and what successes we're seeing and what we're hopeful for. And so it really is kind of like what I do with these online events. We gather huge amounts of people, tens of thousands of people, and we introduce them. And so we had over 20,000 people last week learning about soil, many of them for the first time, many of them being like, this is wild. There's microbes in plants. And of course, my students there are like in the comments being like, yes, they're endophyte. You know what I mean? And it's an incredible community. It's a very active community, a very supportive community. So people coming in are a little bit fire hose of information coming from us, but there's such a supportive community that they fill in the blanks. And we had folks like AEA's Kyle Montgomery, Laura Kavanaugh. We had Mycota Labs, Stephen Russell. We had Ray Archuleta. We had Dr. James F. White. We had so many people who were just incredible standouts in their own field coming together to talk about their section of soil science and their perspective on that space. And so it was I'm losing my voice a little bit. Last week I talked a lot.
Yeah, I bet. Well, congrats on having such a successful conference. Hopefully we can bring some of those good vibes our way for next week.
Heck yeah.
So talk to me about the books that you've written. What's some of the background on that? And you've authored over 15 books. I know you have a bunch of online courses. What's some of your background?
Well, man. So I was a teacher, and before that I was a musician. Man, my voice is shot. Let me grab a drink.
No problem.
So I was a high school teacher, and I became a teacher of teachers, and I got a master's degree in educational psychology and best practices that are proven in the classroom, so research based. And so I really combined all that education, all that curriculum creation, because I had to create new curriculum constantly. I created individual preps for all 150 of my kids. I taught at a school with no books, so I had to create the curriculum from scratch. It was a charter school. We accepted all the kids that were failing out of the other schools because we needed to make our numbers. And so I really had to create individual menus so people would choose their own adventure through English 10. And I was getting higher standardized test scores than anyone else in the district without teaching to the test the whole year. As it approached, I would teach how to go through the test smartly, but I didn't focus on the content. I focused on building them up in authentic ways. And so I've just taught teachers to get rid of homework by teaching authentically so that they don't push their time that they're supposed to be doing their job onto the parents and onto the kids after hours because they should be able to do their job in the time allotted to them. So some teachers love that, some teachers hated that because it would it would make them be have to be more responsible. And so I would do things in such a way where I would involve the kids and I would simulate one-on-one teaching by having round robins where I would edit and grade their essays with them in real time. And so I would have anyway, I would just do all these different things to guarantee that the kids were learning at the highest level. And as I got deeper and deeper into the internet, advertising online, working with bands. I started off working with bands. I started off marketing with bands, and then I kind of switched it to permaculture. And a lot of people are like, "Wow, how do you get so? How did you get so big? How do you do all these different things?" Well, it started off. I was a musician. People were following me because I was a musician, and I never got any traction with that on YouTube, but I certainly did on Twitter. And so I was, huge on Twitter, huge on MySpace. I know that's so funny. People are like, "What is MySpace?" It's like it's a long time ago in a land far away,
I still
when the
remember
internet
it.
was still cool. So I was a musician. And when my wife got cancer, I dropped all that and was at home and became a substitute teacher. And I held on to part of it for a little while. We moved out west, and then I was going down to LA part time to do music still, because that was what made me money. But then I just eventually became a substitute and then felt bad for kids because they weren't being taught anything. And then I became, my mom was a teacher. My mom wrote the special ed curriculum for middle schoolers, for special ed that was adopted into law in New York State and then adopted nationwide. It was the 70s. They would just keep the special ed kids in a room and they wouldn't teach them anything. And my mom believed like they absolutely can learn. They absolutely need to do something. It's negative if you just keep them like this. So that's my mom. And so I come from a very academic family. My brother's a professor, and so I was like this runaway kid who went and played bass and like avoided like doing any of those things. And then it like came home how much education I had already been given and how I needed to like pay it forward. And I mean, I was taught to write essays and to write like to write in general in a small 3-person classroom with a man in a wheelchair who'd been teaching for 55 years and was retired now, but came back just to teach us about writing. It was hyper intense, but it was also like he was so gentle. But this man like was so old and he was such a good teacher, powerful voice. And it's like no one gets that opportunity, Matt. No one gets to be taught by someone who is like a master teacher and then in such an intimate environment that like you get enough attention to become a good writer. So I mean, I feel this obligation to like teach. That's why I have a writing course. I've got like we got so many courses, but because I feel obligated to pay it forward because I feel strongly that other people have not had those opportunities. I teach, a course on regenerative soil and it pairs with my book Regenerative Soil. And meanwhile you can go pay a university 50 grand and they'll teach you my book, right? So it's surreal on some level, but I really feel like I've got to offer affordable options for folks like outside of a university degree to access this information. I mean, I've gotten into just in the past 2 weeks, the University of Copenhagen has reached out and they want me to go out there and train their folks in microscopy specifically in relation to regenerative soil. Uh, but a whole week of it, and we're negotiating right now because I want to bring my wife. She grew up in Europe. So there's an intense amount of interest around this work that I am doing, but I haven't changed. I'm still thinking about how are we going to make this pragmatic? How are we going to make this make make people money and legacy happen so that like kids can grow into this and pass it on to their kids with pride, knowing that that's the right thing to do, you know? And so and I was teaching in Fresno and Madera, so my kids were literally farm kids or mountain kids, you know, kids who are watching people do ranching, large scale ranching. I went to church and I was the Sunday school teacher for the grandchildren of the man whose parents created the dirt road with mule teams and broke the actual territory of the Sierra Nevadas where they are. And with mule teams, did everything and then were the first graziers. And they owned everything on the right side of Highway 41 because they established it. That was them. And so small town, deep roots, but new. Like, so you could like literally go and talk to, I don't want to say their last names, but Carl, and he remembers all of he remembered he passed away, but I got to raise my kids in that environment. I got to teach in that environment. And so legacy, the land, stewardship, real farming, and all the real aspects of farming, just like, when had Keith Burns on Our Soil in the panel, he's talking about how it's not about yield, it's about profits. If we go off yield, we're gonna drive everyone into the ground. And it just, that's where I'm still coming from. And and so that's how I design the things I do. That's why my books scale up to acreage, scale up to tonnage with solutions and ideas, and concepts and methods, because we need to think at acreage to help farmers and also speak their language. That's why this isn't just the biology. I started off in permaculture, learned from Elaine Ingham, learned about the soil food web, got totally enamored in that, then learned about natural farming, learned about anaerobic fermentation, learned about all of these, well, if you're looking up the academic literature, it's the word biofertilizers. They're microbes that are specific to the plants. But then I found out that they were already in nature, and so I was like, okay, the way I'm going to reach the chemistry farmers is I'm going to go down to the cycles in nature and show their relationships are dependent upon microbes. I'm going to name the microbes. And up until this book and this program, no one was naming the microbes. I mean, even to this day, you talk microbes with people, they talk about robust. And I love the people saying robust. They're some of my greatest mentors. I love them. But this is where I kind of stepped out and did my thing. Yeah, separate from everyone. I went down to the individual microbes because I figured that's biochemistry. This is the biochemistry of soil. It exists. And when I was doing it, I had some of the teachers and educators I was working with being like, you can't do this because you're going down to the biochemistry. That's not allowed until this year of education. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care about the years. I care about comprehension and to give farmers the ability to be informed. And so I went down to the biochemistry so that I could talk in chemistry, because that's what farmers are taught at the university. And then if it's cited and referenced and also searchable, they can go and search all this and verify it in their language. And they'll be like, dang, so that microbe does that much nitrate per acre? I'm willing to try that. It's just lactic acid bacteria, which is, a byproduct, rice wash water, grain wash water. hemp wash water. All those wash waters have lactic acid bacteria that you can promote and then use. Like it is a byproduct, it is a waste product from other industries. And then farmers, because they think big scale, start thinking about their neighbors and they're like, I think he has, when he does that operation, when he does that, or they're thinking about the yeast and they're like, well, Chuck is over there doing the spent grain thing. He's got to get rid of that. Can I use that as a rinse? Oh yeah, you can use, and then they start realizing a waste product is an input. And so they're suddenly saving huge amounts of money. They're doing something that speaks their language. And I feel congruent with who I am as a teacher to that those that my students. My students are all in their 20s and early 30s now because I've been retired for almost 10 years. I'm still in contact with them all. And I'm still doing the same thing. I haven't changed. And so this goes down to the individual cycles, microbes, enzymes, and ions. So folks who speak chemistry, you see yourself in this. You understand it. Folks that speak biology because you're either, from the university and you're studying biofertilizers, or you're like an Elaine Ingham soil food web trained person, you'll see yourself in this, but there's extensions, corrections, and caveats and contexts and ranges for that information. That's the thing I discovered. I was trained in the soil food web. Laningham taught me one on one, and I've taken her advanced microscopy courses. I've done all that. I've digested all that, and then I've combined it with all the latest research. I've also worked with scientists that are soil scientists and redox, like at the CIRAD, like Olivia Husson, Dr. Olivia Husson, and then Rutgers University mycologist and rhizophagy expert James F. White, along with dozens of other experts, including John Kemp, including, heavily referencing the work of Don Huber. I'm kind of freaking out that you have Don Huber speaking at EcoAg this year. I'm like trying to mentally prepare myself for that. I'm actually probably going to change my flight so that I can spend more time in the last hours of this event with Joel, listening to Joel, of course, with that keynote, but also maybe absorbing more from Don. I
Do you
don't know
know what
how
he's
long.
speaking about?
What?
Do you know what Don's speaking about?
No, I don't. It doesn't matter. Don
Well, he just
Huber.
did. They just did a really interesting study on sauerkraut. They're called soggy sauerkraut. Yeah, mineral
This is a
nutrition and plant
man that
disease.
has done more for soil science and plant science, and I don't think I don't think people realize how much Don Huber has done. I've got chills right now. It is I had forgotten in the moment talking to you about this that was happening. Don Huber is going to be there. I can see John Kemp another time. I can see, a bunch of these people. Joel, he's probably gonna be around for a long time, but I don't know when I'm gonna see Gabe Brown again. I don't know if I'm gonna see Don Huber ever again. I've never met him. We've corresponded. I I read so much of the things that he's done. It's so wild that we get to be in the presence of these incredible minds, these folks who have dedicated their lives to making farming, the growing of food, health, and what we're doing in regenerative ag easier. Like they literally have sacrificed. And I also mean like Datnoff and Elmer, these folks, because there's a new edition, you know what I mean? And some of them carried on and some of them did not. Some of them are retired. So I value, and so that's the thing is it's like I had 40 pages of undouble space, like 12-point font. I shrunk it down for the references. I shrunk it down to fit into this so it wouldn't be as long so that the print cost could be lowered. But I love reading, I love referencing. And so what I did was I combined everything, went down to the principles behind things, why natural farming works the way it does when it does, why Elaine Ingham stuff works when it does, why it does, why John Kemp's stuff works the way it does, why all these different paradigms for approaching growing food work because they relate to the actual natural cycles and how nature does it. And because we're just aligning to the way nature does it, that's why it works. There's not like an alternative way of doing things that works on a longer scale. We've already proved that with the Green Revolution. It doesn't work long term. And so you can't cheat the system. You have to obey. If you want to build soil and have a long term business, you have to make sure it's regenerative. It gets better and better every year and it comes back. So it regenerates. And so that's the perennial aspect. That's the returning of mycorrhizal fungi. This this microscopy focus that we're going to be talking about at EcoAg this year that I'm going to be talking about, and we're going to be digging into in the pre-conference workshop that I'll be doing. It's mycorrhizal fungi, and mycorrhizal fungi partners with over 90% of plants. The stuff it doesn't partner with are the weeds and then the alpine, cold temperate, trees and stuff and shrubs. So it's basically everything. And we can't see it unless you go to a university lab with mercury lamps that could explode and then hazmat suits everywhere. Oh, except for this device that I'm touching right now. So this is the first device of a new generation of devices that are going to be hitting everywhere. They're LED and they have not just the correct UV light, but it has a filter cube, so you only see this targeted section of light. So I can see mycorrhizal fungi. I can evaluate whether mycorrhizal fungi inoculants are good or not, and I can show up the next year after you did it 1 year and verify that it came back. And you don't need to pay for it ever again because you're doing regenerative, you're doing a cover crop, you're crimping it down, and then it carries on into the next season every year because it's regenerative. And so farmers know this. They for years did rhizobia once. They're not doing a cover crop and doing rhizobia over again. Once they do it, it sticks. Same thing with mycorrhizal fungi. It's regenerative. And so there's all these microbes that once you establish a living soil and once you introduce them back, because the reason mycorrhizal fungi is not there is because phosphate fertilizer kills it and pushes it out. Nitrogen synthetic fertilizer destroys the remaining organic matter and hyphae that and roots. It solubilizes it all. So between the phosphate fertilizer and the nitrogen synthetic fertilizer, we actually destroy mycorrhizal fungi. And that's why we have this opportunity. And it really is an opportunity. Folks don't realize, and farmers don't realize, that the benefit is up to 30-40% more yield. I know that's the why where we don't want to go there, but that's huge. And then not only that, I mean, you do it once, you get 30 to 40% more yield. Um, you also get a crazy amount of drought tolerance. You It increases your roots by such an amount that you get way more nutrients, more nutrient dense. It's also the case that you accumulate so much soil organic matter. It's 30 to 40%, well, depending on where you are in the world, 30 to 50% of organic matter increase every season is caused by arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. This is where gibberellins comes in. And so arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi is this incredible benefit to your plant. It's also the filter for like arsenic and other heavy metals. It blocks it. And so we have this huge opportunity to bring back the yields to heal the soil regeneratively by partnering with this. And that's just one aspect. You talk about EM1, Terraganics, got a product that is a combination of primarily, there's a lot of things in it, but primarily it is Rhodocytomonas palustris, cerevisiae yeast, and lactic acid bacteria. And those things together reduce, and they advertise this. This is their leader. Your nitrogen fertilizer by 50%. That's how they advertise it. They're that confident. So they're literally reducing by just adding the microbes back in. And so it's like we're looking at huge amounts of savings when you're like cutting 50% off of any input. Fertilizer being one of the big ones, pesticides being another. And so, and I address all that too in here. And so, because of John Kemp, because of Chris Trump. And so, We have the ability to create soils that are so healthy. Our plants are insect, disease, and pest proof, blight proof, and we get higher yields, faster maturation rates. All these amazing things that are happening for some folks. There's reasons why, and that's what I put into this book. And so there's the recipes, there's the microbe menus, there's the the entire planning and strategy on how to remediate and how to develop a holistic soil or management plan. We'll be talking about that in the pre-conference workshop, talking about all that, but not just that. We're going to be talking about regenerative soil microscopy because the way that farmers are testing needs to be way more holistic, and where the rubber meets the road is the microscope perspective. So it's like you may read that you have this high in soil organic matter, but is it living or is it dead? Because I can bring you dead or gross stuff from Home Depot that'll read super high in organic matter, and it's like caustic, dead, nasty stuff, and you don't want that. And so, yeah, if you know, you know, and you can avoid that. But if you're building it yourself and you want to verify, if you're buying from someone else, you got to verify, especially if you're buying by tonnage. And so this whole living world, this whole living soil has to have that holistic perspective where we're looking through the microscope, we're evaluating the life. And so this book is a combination of a lot of different things. This has charts that compares microbes, compares microbes within their individual groups. So compares bacteria to bacteria, compares fungi to fungi, but also compares all the things against each other. Folks don't get charts that show ranges of expression. They get told the it's average this size. That's really misleading. So I've had to create new ways of communicating a lot of these ideas to like myth bust, because there's a lot of people who created this good, bad, evil like dichotomy around soil, and this is just not that way. In fact, this is the best way to think about it. The more adaptable, the more dominant a microbe. I'll say it again. If it is dominant, it's going to be the more adaptable than everything else. Why do you think it's dominant? So when we're talking about, like Norcoiotes, turning from like a hyphae into bacilli and cocci shapes, which are usually associated with bacteria, so it looks like fungi and then looks like bacteria, right? That's normal because it's so adaptable. It's occupying the different environments that require those different shapes. Easiest way to put it, morphology, shapes, right? So, so that's what I have been working on, mapping out and showcasing and breaking up people's understanding, because I do DNA testing. So the third book in this series is going to be on DNA, so regenerative soil DNA. This is a trilogy. Only the first two books are out, but I have to do a lot of work on spreading this knowledge so that it has the context of understanding to be received properly. So this book is the first book where people can learn how to do this and see the invisible fungi. Farmers aren't going to invest in mycorrhizal fungi inoculant unless they can vet the inoculant first.
Yeah.
We can
Do
do
you
that finally.
do you see?
Farmers aren't going to invest in paying for fields of it or even a test field of it until they know after they do it there's a way to test. And now we finally do. And so I'm going to be showcasing that in the workshop. And that's what this book and this whole series is about, is giving farmers the abilities to make informed decisions.
Do you see with these microscopes that more farmers are going to own them and have them on their farm, or do you see it more as consultants are going to have this tool to go out and service folks in a better way?
I have students with farms that are providing for Whole Foods. They're pivot based farms, they're giant. I've got students who have a family farm where they're an advisor and their brother's the one doing all the hands-on, but they planned it all together, 30,000 acres. I probably can say his name, but I have a lot of students that are at different scales, and they are seeing real results. They're excited about this. They want to figure out how, because I mean, a lot of them are done a lot of the easy. I shouldn't say easy. A lot of the first steps that people in those positions adopt. It's not all these changes aren't easy, but doing crimping and mulching um, at the end of the season, covering the ground, they're seeing massive benefits from those first steps. But they want to incorporate all the things, but they also want to do it in a way that makes sense financially, in a way that guarantees it works. And so can you say the question again?
I'm just wondering if you think this new microscope,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you,
No,
do you
that's what I
do
was
you see
saying.
it? Yeah, do you see it
They
being on?
they already are. So
Yeah,
I've got those students that are got the big farms. They're doing it. They're looking at things. They've learned how to do it. I've got a ton of consultants. So there's almost 300 people who are in that community. Almost all of them have been doing microscopy before. A lot of them are have laboratories. A lot of them have been doing it a long time and have been behind the scenes, had a lot of anxiety and stress because they've been doing things feeling that it wasn't a complete story, feeling like dread because they're missing the mark and they know it, and having bad results come back because of recommendations even, or people exposing them by taking their same sample and giving it to someone else and getting different results and recommendations. So, so they come to me because I am all about that alignment between what you're trying to do and testing for it so we actually can see if it happened. Because there's a reason why. There's a reason why. There always is a reason why. And if you can actually have an honest look at it, you can see these things. And so I see so many people who are in consultancies coming to me because they need the clarity, and they also need to do it differently. Consultants until now are like, you're a seven. And obviously they're like, you have this many protozoa, you have this many per gram or per acre, and they do numbers. That's meaningless to a farmer. When you do my methods where you're showing side by side comparisons to other soils in the bioregion, then you're actually being honest. And I'm not saying they're being dishonest. I'm saying an honest chance at understanding what's going on, an honest like comparison. Because it's like you're not giving them a fighting chance otherwise, not giving yourself a fighting chance otherwise. So that's what I mean by that, old fashioned word, right? But we got to give ourselves like that kind of honest comparison. You got to compare apples to apples and not trick yourself and other people. And that's what's been happening. And that's why I'm creating this database so they'll be like, oh, what other farmers in this area of Wisconsin are doing this, and what are their results? What Let's look at their soil. And then you can hold your soil up to their soil, the microscope images even, and then also their nitrate and also and you can see their actions they took in between the tests. So that's my database, the R Soil database. It's in progress right now. I was able to get an update last night from the team. It's really exciting. It's really coming along. Um, but it's going to be really, really enlightening for farmers because so many farmers, they are literally doing this work alone, and it's an echo chamber. They have no way to compare it. And then when they do compare it, they get compared to like these giant averages. And I mean, bless their hearts, all these researchers, we need them doing this work. But unless we put boundaries on comparison, it's not fair. It's not even fair if across town there's a clay soil and you're in a sandy, silty soil and you compare your numbers. It's not fair. You have different air gaps. You have different amount of like interstitial air pockets in your soil. Loamy soil is 50 to 60% air. This means that when we do these tests And we're saying, oh, you have this many microbes per gram, milliliter, acre, blah, 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 whatever number they want to throw at you, it's always going to be wrong when compared to a more compact soil. So the sandy, silty soil versus the clayey soil, the numbers are never going to compare. So I had to create a totally different way of doing things, and I had to break people's assumptions so that we actually could give regenerative farmers clear answers so that they could succeed. So that's a lot of what we're going to be doing in this workshop. It's going to be myth busting. And for farmers, I think it's going to be, oh, this is the reason why I felt like this wasn't right yet. And you've been waiting for that moment. And that's right. Farmers have that gut instinct. They're tied to the land, and the costs make them be shrewd. The costs, everything's so cut to the bone so often that they only can think about what actually I can verify. If I can't verify it, I can't even consider it. It may work, but it may not work for me, and I can't financially risk it if it's not something I can control.
Yeah.
So, so
No,
it's
that's really brilliant. The database is going to be huge.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. So this is all the stuff I'm doing right now is preparatory in a way for the database. The database and then the DNA testing. I already know what's going to happen. I'll give you a hint. I know how to do DNA testing. I've done it enough and I've researched other people doing DNA testing to know that DNA is a river. It's like the Mississippi. Everything around it influences it when you test it. So it's been a big rainy season. All that silt, all that runoff, you test the Mississippi, you're going to get a completely different read than it's been drought. Completely different read. Oh, it's been a gentle rain. Oh, it's all filtered so well. Everything's really clean. The water's really crystal clear right this time of year. It's the same river. It's not different, but it's an organism. It's living, and it's comprised of living things that are responding to the outside environment. And that's what the microbes in us and on the surface of us are doing as humans, and all animals. Plants are even more so. So, and the soil even more so, right? And so we're going to figure out that it's good, but it's a snapshot of a condition that's totally always constantly shifting and changing. It's like redox, it's like bricks. You got to choose a time when to do it, be consistent when you do it. We have to do way more tests when we do DNA testing, and we have to also take it with grains of salt. I don't think until the cost comes way, way, way down that it's anything but grounding and myth busting with the information we get. So what do I mean by that? You're not going to do a test and then be like, well, we need to change this. No, I could have told you what to do action wise without ever out doing a DNA test because I can see the microbe numeracy. I can see what microbes are present. I can see all of those kinds of things. I don't need to know them individually to know the morphological pressures that are caused by the environment and the needs there in place. So, so DNA is going to be really good for grounding us in how much diversity there is, what's really possible, and how life actually works. Because it's not what people think. DNA is, and I'll save it for the book, but DNA is a river, it's a living river, but it is also so tied into the outside reaction that its potential and its raw potential, but discernment is dictated by ourselves and our reaction. So you know what I mean? Just like with the plant, it's dictated by the plant in the moment. And there's so many genetic options that they gain from both parents or both from like wild genes too, that most of that stuff isn't ever touched. So it's really, really important that we recognize that when we just look at DNA and they're like, these are there, they're there. Yeah, but what DNA inside those living things is being triggered? Oh, that's another DNA test. Yeah. Epigenetics, right? And then you do that test, and then so you can get really lost in the minutia. And you're like, oh, well, it's triggering this epigenetic thing for it to look like hyphae, to be false fungi. Wait, you can just see that with a microscope. Why do we spend all this money? You know what I mean? Right? So I am creating that, but also again, the eye not on navel gazing, not on pondering the universe, but grounding us in practice. I threw out this book. This book right here was 3 times its size. And I cut it down to this because I asked the question in the middle of writing it, how does this relate to an action? Like, does this actually lead to like me changing an action? And I was like, oh my gosh, so much of the information out there is navel gazing. It's there's no actual action connected to it. They're like, oh, you have 10,000 different bacteria instead of 15,000. Okay. What are you going to do about that? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's so easy. I mean, they're like, oh, we need to be more diverse. It's like, I could have told you that just by like looking at your soil with a microscope that was $200 microscope. I didn't even need the fancy one. So, so grounding people and being pragmatic is, I really think, the reason that I've been invited into this community, because I'm I'm like a glorified English teacher. You know, if you think about it, I went into this focus on communication and making things clear for curriculum for gardeners and permaculturists, and then I got so deep into soil that it became relevant to a huge amount of people, compost companies, regenerative farmers, the whole cannabis industry. It's really wild. Because they test their product before it's sold down to the parts per million. So they needed science that was verifiable because they did the tests. They could see it, and they needed it that it was reliable. And that's why they went to me. And now to be, I'm not a cannabis like expert grower or anything of the sort. I'm a curriculum and systems expert and educational psychology expert. And I grow and I've created innovations in the world and the microscope world, and I've had incredible successes, and I'm so grateful for them. But just it's just been an amazing journey, and I just want to recognize I've been invited into this community because this stuff works. And I'm just honored to be included, especially in EcoAg, um, alongside Gabe Brown, John Kemp, Mark Shepard, all these people who have served as mentors for me. Joel Saladin. Joel Saladin wrote in the Regenerative Career Guide I wrote for high school guidance counselors almost 10 years ago. He wrote in a whole 1 page section and gave me pictures of him, high quality, that his daughter took for this book that anyone could buy. I mean, it's just like a goes through different career paths and has different people from those career paths inviting you. I designed it so that kids and high and college kids can like really feel like they can enter these industries. So these are people I look up to who are doing things on the large scale, and I don't have 100 acres. I don't. My dad wasn't the farmer. My dad is the guy who was offered the family farm in Iowa, and to this day regrets saying sell it. Right? He knows exactly where it is. He checks on it regularly, and he feels the pain. Wild, right? Wild. But yeah, but
That's the
but
only
that's
sad
the
thing you said so far.
maybe that's why I'm the way I am, because I miss that family farm in my DNA somehow, in my blood. And that's why I feel like serving this community so that this community can reclaim that legacy aspect is so important. So, so it feels really good to be included along such incredible exemplars. It feels incredibly I just feel honored and blessed to be able to provide something that is not just useful, but has had people who already learned from me at the highest level, who are in my permaculture world, using all the stuff I taught, all the Elaine Ingham stuff. And then when they learned regenerative soil, which combines John Kempf, all these other amazing people, dozens of people, I'm never going to name them all, but they're, they doubled their yield in 1 year. And then they gave their excess to feed the hungry, to local food bank. I helped I helped a farmer. Well, no, I helped a beekeeper who just inherited like acres and acres and acres of peaches, and he's a beekeeper, and he's like, they're all sick, and then he got these acres and acres of citrus. They're all dying from citrus greening, and I was able to just through email with the things in this make it so that he no longer has to do anything other than use an Italian flail mower to manage because he flipped the biology so much the citrus green is gone. He flipped the biology so much he doesn't need to add any fertilizers of any sort. It's all living soil. He did it in one season. We just kept going back and forth over email. And now a year later, he sends me this thing after doing all the work. He's like, I don't do anything now. We just mow. There's no critters. There's no like pests. I mean, there's obviously like good bugs. And there's no blight, there's no greening, and I'm giving all the excess to the homeless and to the hungry through the food banks,
That's
proper
amazing.
channels, right? And so again, it is that spirit in which I believe so much of this community exists. They want to pay it forward. They want things that work. They want things that you can lean on because they're universally true. And now we can build our culture on them, build our agriculture, our community, all of it. And so I'm just honored to be able to provide something at that level that helps people so verifiably and profoundly. And yeah, I'm really excited to be there at this event. I normally don't go to events the whole time. I usually show up and do my thing and then leave and come home. I got 4 dogs, got 2 boys we homeschool. My wife is a 7-time cancer survivor. I kind of have to be at home. You know what I mean, right? So typically don't ever hang out. And now for this event, I feel like there's no, I don't have any excuses. This is the moment to hang out. If you're going to hang out, this is the moment. I've never had more mentors of this caliber at any event, and there's some of them I've never met in person. John Kempf and I have been talking back and forth with joy, with a deep friendship for 5 years, and we've never been able to meet in person. I mean, his child was born in the middle of our friendship, and he's like showing me baby pictures. We're really good friends. And and I've never been able to hang out with him. So this is a very I'm gonna be at his day the whole day. So if you guys want to join us at that, please check out EcoAg. This is the 49th. How many events have you gone to that it's the 49th, right? This is a huge deal. This is a huge tradition. And these are the people that have led us to this point, and we're at the point of a renaissance. We're at the point of a revolution of something I've never seen before. But it is so American. It is something that that historically we've seen in different aspects we've seen. We gather together in our enthusiasm and our demand for a higher level of greatness, our demand for more from ourselves, from each other, in enthusiasm, in faith, and in knowing what's possible and doing it. That can do. Uh, it's happening. It's like a great awakening. It's like a revolution, like an industrial, it's a regenerative ag revolution. And I know you feel it, Taylor. You're seeing it on your end. I'm seeing it on my end. There's so much interest, so many people just dipping their toe in it. I had this huge conference, tens of thousands of people. So many emails are, what's soil organic matter? What's organic matter? And we have, it's wild. People are so interested, they don't even know what we're talking about, but they're excited and they know this is the right place to be. And so it's a thrilling thing, and it bodes nothing but good. Nothing but good.
Yeah, it really does. And I think it's important, these in-person events, like we were talking before we started recording, but there's something different about the in-person events. I mean, you just put on a huge virtual conference, which those things are super important, but to be in the same room of these guys and to be able to talk and communicate and share ideas, it's hard to beat that. And I think we've proven that people are willing to meet in person again. One of the big things that folks told me when I bought it was, um, events are dying and people aren't willing to meet in person. Well, I think we've bucked that. I think this is going to be an amazing group of people coming in. I got chills listening to you talk there. That was a great way to put everything.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I'm really excited. I'm gonna try to be there at the early morning coffee with Joel. How often can you wake up early and then go and sit with someone of the caliber of Joel Saladin and then like have that just be your morning like meditation, your morning reflection? I I know in this life you're probably not going to get very many opportunities to do that. And so I saw that and I was like, wow, okay, you get it. You really get it. You created such an intimate perspective to this conference and gathering. And that's part of the reason why I was like, I need to change my dang flight. I'll lose sleep. It's okay. I'll come in way, way late. But
Yeah.
um I need to be there for all those final moments to say goodbye. Maybe I might stay that night now actually and go back the next day so that the dinners that night I'm there for. uh I wasn't expecting to do that. I might have to pay the fee. Might get in trouble with the wife for that. It's okay. If you got to change the fee, we'll be in the doghouse together. But but do it. I I've never seen a gathering like this before. I think John Kemp just said that on an advertisement you guys put out, but it's
Yeah.
so true. And for me, I became what I became because I did a Kickstarter and it ended the day that I went to a physical event and everyone recognized me. And then I went on stage and talked about it at the same event. And it was like I was immediately accepted into the community. Like, and I had started my Kickstarter as my way of like announcing myself in the permaculture community. And then a month later, I went to this physical event. And then I was in a mastermind with people I met there. One of them is Neil Speckman, the guy who greens Saudi Arabia with just rainwater, like rainwater and plants and earthworks. He's greening the desert. It's now looks like unbelievable, like amber waves of grain, like this. Every time I watch it, I get super emotional. I get super emotional. I don't know how I can't. I even like talk about it right now. I get a little bit of it, but like I'll go into it rationally, especially when I'm like teaching or something. I'll go into it rationally, but seeing something go from white desert to what it must have been like when Jesus was walking the land, what it must have been like when, you know what I mean, when the scriptures were written. I just lose it every time. Um, to reverse it back like that, to heal the earth like that is something just so wild. And that was the person I was in a mastermind with. The other person was the person who did all the filming and all the marketing for Elaine Ingham the past 10 years. The other person in it was the person who was the editor for Permaculture Magazine North America. And the other person was the co-editor of that. And so it was this mastermind that changed everything. And then I launched my first course as part of a challenge from that mastermind. You only really form those bonds that make you take those deeper actions when you form a group or a mastermind. You can replicate it online, you can imitate it. It is harder. It is so much easier when you're in that electricity of the magnetism of another person. So I love my online events. They get big, they get crazy. We have a ton of fun, but there's nothing like an in-person event. There's nothing like an in-person event. It's so different. So I hope to see you all there. I will be there at EcoAg. I'm arriving on Sunday. I'm changing my flight from Thursday night to Friday morning. So I'm gonna be there the whole time, extra the whole time, because this is an opportunity that just it just doesn't happen. I mean, this may be Gabe Brown's final event. I've only met Gabe once, you know. Don, this may be the only time I could meet Don. So this is just such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for doing it, Taylor. Thank you for picking up the torch and running with it, picking up the flag and running with it the way you have. I'm excited for this event to sell out. I'm excited for us to be at max capacity and for us to get to just have an incredible week together.
I appreciate it, Matt. Those are amazing words. Well said. Um, I'm looking forward to meeting you in person too.
Heck yeah.
Where can folks find out more information about all of your stuff and how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so if you just type in regenerativesoilscience.com, it'll take you like it's a lead link. So you can just type in www dot, and all that stuff, or just regenerativesoilscience.com. It'll take you there. It has my books, it has reviews, it has my courses, because everything I write, because I'm a teacher, is actually standard-based curriculum. So that's why it's used in universities and some high schools, but I'm seeing it more and more in universities. But I designed it so that it's all curricular based, it's all standard based. The alignment between assessment and objectives are all there. So that's why it's easier for me to teach myself. So those courses are there. If you go to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or bookstore, you'll see that I have like over 24 different publications. These are the books that are the books I really highly recommend. I've got books on permaculture and gardening and enthusiasm. And those are, those ones are really good. I love those books too. But if for this audience, for the ag audience, regenerative ag audience, this is where I would start. And if you're interested in the next level of testing, check this out for sure. But this is going to flip your lid. This is going to change and open the mind of anyone who's in farming, ag, growing horticulture, you name it, ranching, dairy. This will change and open your mind to new possibilities. And I do it in such a way that you can see through all the other methodological options so that you can see their effect, their benefit, their weaknesses and strengths, so that you can actually respond fluently. Because that's what it's about. So that's what I recommend.
Awesome, Matt. We also carry Matt's books on our bookstore as well, and we're looking forward to seeing you in person. Thanks again for being a part of our conference, and thanks for spending some time with me today.
Heck yeah, Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Acres USA podcast, a podcast production of Acres USA. Find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, and other popular podcast platforms. Acres USA is North America's oldest publisher on production-scale organic and regenerative farming. For more than 50 years, our mission has been to help farmers, ranchers, and market gardeners grow food profitably, regeneratively, and with nature in mind. Find our books and other Acres USA media and learn about Acres USA events at acresusa.com. Read our online magazine at members.acresusa.com, and we'd like to thank Acres USA staff for their contributions to producing this podcast. This episode was edited and engineered by Weston Larson of Acres USA. We're grateful to our guests for taking the time to talk with us about their experience.